Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Answers for Parents. If you're watching this, you're most likely a parent. You want to guide, teach, and raise your child in a correct and effective ways. How can we know which ways are true to the nature of a child and the correct ways to teach them? A human child has a unique mind with thoughts that cause learning, adapting, and understanding, which leads to knowledge. Do you want your child to be knowledgeable? Of course. Then a child can grow in knowledge and navigate wisely on this earth. How do we know the correct way to guide and teach our child? Can we see into their mind and observe how they learn? This pathway has been discovered and marked by scholars. Not just by thoughts or opinions, but by correct experimental research. One such scholar was Dr. Paul W. Robinson. He learned by studying previous psychologist research that we can see into the mind of a human and observe how they learn and acquire knowledge. We know the correct application of knowledge is wisdom. Do you want to have a wise child? If you do desire a wise child, I'm going to issue a warning to parents. Do not base your insight into the mind of your child on psychologists who only proclaim their own opinions, which are not based in facts, learned through correct experimental research procedures. You see, most of the so-called effective parenting books out there are only based on some psychologists' opinions, not based on correct experimental research procedures. And opinions often are not based in facts. So now you have been warned. And I have just become extremely unpopular in the opinionated, non-research based psychologists' minds. However, now true insights based on correct, reproducible experimental research are about to be revealed. Do you want to know what experiment-based psychologists learn from their research? In this course, we will discover insights into how the human mind learns, understands, and makes choices which affects their behaviors. Also, how this applies especially to parenting. So buckle up for a book that explains how children manipulate their parents and how parents can turn the tables. This book, what is this book? This book, written by Dr. Paul W. Robinson, is called Manipulating Parents. I'm going to read a summary of this book. Here is a book that promotes the idea that parents, rather than children, should preside over the family. Having taken several problem children at a time into his home for over 10 years at the time of this writing, that was 30 years ago, Dr. Robinson provides realistic advice on how parents can be successful in raising children without becoming servants to the whims and fancies of their children. Many techniques are revealed that any parent can use to more effectively handle parent-child confrontations, including how to successfully raise children without sacrificing growth in the parent's own life, how to counteract the most effective strategies that children of all ages use to manipulate parents. Six ways that parents can effectively handle misbehavior in children. 4 methods to develop proper attitudes and actions in children. How to get a teenager to care about the feelings of the parent. The key ingredients needed in a home to produce happy children and happy parents. And lastly, when to seek professional help for your child. That's a summary of this book. But to understand this book and the information we're about to receive, we need to understand the character and abilities of Dr. Paul W. Robinson. So I'm going to read from the foreword of, at that time, a new school teacher, and another person, the director of the county foster care program, and also a renowned child psychologist, a co-worker or colleague of Dr. Paul Robinson. These small biographies will give us insight into his knowledge, skills, abilities, and science. This first foreword is from Cynthia Smith, a third grade school teacher, who was presented with a problem class of 18 students. She states, Dr. Robinson's tactics for manipulating children really work. Grant Elementary School in a certain city and state had an unusually large number of hyperactive, uncooperative, third grade children in 1979. The principal took all the unmanageable kids and formed them into one class. This teacher, Cynthia Smith, was assigned to teach these 18 children, she says, many of whom were on medication for hyperactivity. The experience I went through for the next 5 months can be described only as a nightmare. Each day's class was filled with fights, yelling, throwing chairs, and comments like, "Try to make me do that." Many mornings I cried as I anticipated going to school. I often called in sick. The principal could get no substitute teacher who took my place to come back for a second time. In January, I told the principal I was quitting because I could not take it anymore. He talked me into staying. At that time, I heard about Dr. Robinson and skeptically went to him for help. He came out, observed, filmed my class, and then explained how we could manipulate those kids. With strong doubts, I listened as he told me how to implement tactics which would redirect their aggressive antisocial hyperactivity into achievement-oriented, socially accepted activities. And it worked. Within 3 weeks, we had subtly turned the tables on all my students, and they were doing their schoolwork. In class, they studied vocabulary words, read books, helped each other learn. Many even asked to take schoolwork home. Never before had any of them asked for homework. The principal, the other teachers, and I could not believe our eyes. 18 previously unmanageable kids were now working together to learn. I was in control of the classroom. KBYU television came out to film a documentary which showed how the kids had acted before and what they became. Thanks to many of the tactics presented in this book, I now have confidence in working with problem children. I know how to out-manipulate children for their good and mine. A parent often has 1 or 2 problem children to work with. Imagine what coping with 18 was like. This is from Cynthia Smith, third grade teacher in Grant Elementary School. The next forward is from Mr. Ed Soley, who I've met and know. He was the director of Utah County Foster Care Program, the Utah State Division of Social Services. And he states, for many years, Dr. Robinson has taken some of the more difficult problem children from our state foster parent program into his own home. The problems these children, mostly teenagers, have had includes being suicidal, incest cases, having strong character disorders, being defiant to parents, child abuse cases, lawbreakers, and drug users. He has taken in children of all colors, ages, and varying ethnic backgrounds. We have yet to see him fail with a child placed in his home, says Mr. Ed Sully, director of the Utah County Foster Care Program and the Utah State Division of Social Services. And lastly, a colleague of Dr. Paul W. Robinson says, as a child psychologist, I have been a colleague of Dr. Paul W. Robinson's for over 10 years. It is not hard for a psychologist to fly into a city, give a talk on how to raise children, and then fly out again. No one sees his children or knows of his if he practices what he preaches. Many psychologists tell parents how to deal with problem children, but Dr. Robinson is the only one I know of who has the ability to take them into his home and show how it is done. I can tell you firsthand that Dr. Robinson and his wife Carol effectively use the strategies and tactics presented in this book. I have been to their home many times. They have had children in their home from Puerto Rico, Canada, India, and Russia, besides many born in the United States. What they can do with problem children of all ages is nothing short of amazing. Dr. Robinson is a rather unique psychologist in that he is both an applied psychologist and scientist. Besides being effective in treating behavioral problems, he has an outstanding record as a scholar and researcher. He is the author of numerous professional journal articles and 5 college textbooks at that time. Now it's 9. One of his books was the #1 selling college text in the nation in the field of experimental psychology. Combining his skills as a scientist and applied psychologist, Dr. Robinson has studied hundreds of parent-child problem situations, identifying many principles and strategies that slip by the average psychologist. In this book, he provides insights and strategies parents can use to cope with children that cannot be found anywhere else. And he does so in a storytelling manner that readers will find interesting and enjoyable. Any parent or teacher who is serious about learning how to effectively deal with children should have a copy of this book. This is from Dr. Larry C. Jensen, a child psychologist who I met and know, professor of psychology and an author. Those 3 forewords of Dr. Paul W. Robinson explain his great uncontested skills in scholarship and scientist abilities. So in our next video, we're going to begin with chapter 1. And I want us, and thank you for joining us today. Please like and subscribe to Answers for Parents. And I want us to always remember who is really driving the family bus.